motorcycles, and personal watercraft at their 27th and I-80 location.
Imagine hitting rewind.
You're listening to Walk the Herd on 93.7 The Ticket, when unheard issues get brought to light and every perspective counts. Here is your host, Rebecca Pearson.
All right. Welcome into Walk the Herd. This is 93.7 The Ticket, Sunday night. Exciting day. We're coming off like really fresh off a volleyball win. Another sweep. Unbelievable. Girls volleyball. Going to fit right into our topic tonight. Aniko, are you there? Hopefully you can hear us. So, yep.
I just have to try to have her unmute her mic here.
Okay, very good. So, Aniko and Renee, we're doing Walk the Herd. We are here to explore different perspectives. So, if you're new to the show, let me just give you a rundown, and then we'll introduce our guest for tonight. We're very fortunate to have our esteemed guest with us. So, Walk the Herd is how we explore different perspectives where we're challenging beliefs and trying to open minds. And it could be across sports, business, life. I mean, who knows? We have covered the gamut of topics, and tonight's going to be no different. We are not trying to convince you of anything. The whole point of this show is to give you a different perspective and to maybe understand why someone has a different opinion than you or sees things a different way, lots of times based on our experience. So we hope tonight will be equally fun. And we have a great show for you tonight. So let me start by just saying that we're joined in studio by Dr. Lawrence Chatters. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here on the show.
It's fantastic. Yes. Well, and so Aniko, is she dialed in now so I can hear her?
I am.
Nope, still not there. All righty. Very good. We're going to carry on. Aniko, when you get some airtime there, let us know. So, Lawrence, you were just on air a couple of hours ago. Yes. So maybe the first thing to tell our guests is that you have a show here with 93.7 The Ticket called The Law of Lift.
Yes, and I do have a show. I'm really honored to be here today to talk about this important topic. But my show is every Sunday from 3 to 5. The Law of Lift is just about people's inspirational stories, people who have lived some life and experienced some things and gotten through adversity. And so I love to hear the stories of all the people who have been on there. And I'm hoping that we have a show swap because I'd love to have you on my show sometime soon.
We can do that. That would be great. And it's the great thing about Sundays at the Ticket. You know, you really should just start at 7 o'clock with Sherry and Mike, and it just goes all day. We have Ricky Simmons after this, and sometimes we have a nighttime show with Marlena Bowdry also. So it's just a great day at the Ticket. A lot of things that make you stop and think, And in between, we have a little bit of sports. So Jay Foreman covers Inside the Huddle, and then we had volleyball post coverage in between your show and here. So yes. It's been a great day. All right. Well, let me start, Lawrence, with a lot of people know you, but a lot of people don't, and we have no ability to cover the entire resume. Okay, not tonight. All However. Right. Because of the long resume, I thought with a lot of your accomplishments that we can only touch on a few of them tonight, but relevant to the topic. Is a little bit about your current role. So you're the Senior Vice President of Strategy and Capabilities. Is that correct?
Strategic Initiatives and Capacity, yes.
Capacity,
yes.
Okay. Capacity at the Thurgood Marshall College Fund.
Yes.
Okay. I was trying to remember that.
That's
I should have
great.
just checked my notes. So.
Yeah, no, that's good.
All right. So tell folks what that actually is.
So I work for the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, established in 1987. It really provides scholarships for students to attend historically Black colleges and universities, short HBCUs. If you're not familiar with HBCUs, they were established in 1890 through a separate grant, separate from the land grant. And essentially, they all these years have educated a wide range of people. So these are mainly the state schools. There are also private HBCUs as well, like Spelman, Clark, Atlanta, Morehouse. But I represent organizations like Alabama State, Morgan State, Bowie State, mostly state schools that are also historically Black colleges and universities. We provide scholarships for students. We provide professional development opportunities for them. and we help universities build their capacity. And that's really what my role is all about, is helping universities build their capacity.
Oh, wonderful. And for people who don't have nonprofit speak, maybe you could translate what capacity building is into regular speak.
Absolutely. So capacity building is helping an institution do what they do even better and be able to serve more people. And it usually has to do with providing them with additional resources. And so if you think about anything that you would increase the capacity of, you're just increasing the size of it and the scope of it. And for our institutions, that's allowing them to serve more students, allowing them to do better in fundraising, allowing them to do better from a retention perspective. There's so many things within higher education that are important for the bottom line. We help them do that better.
That's fantastic. Well, and this is just the beginning of kind of establishing you as an expert in the area that we're talking about. So in addition to that, you just were on a speaking gig.
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
you cover athletics, you cover education and mental health. There's a lot of things that you have done, but the topic that you were talking about, because you told me about it, was psychological safety, or at least one of the topics was
Yes.
psychological safety. And for me, one of the reason that appeals to me and why I was hoping you just explain briefly what that is because I think a lot of this show is
Yes.
about providing psychological safety for these types of conversations. So
That's
what
awesome.
when you're asked to speak about that, what is the purpose and what does it cover?
So mainly the purpose for this talk out in Washington Athletics, the Huskies, was to, and by the way, just a quick definition of psychological safety, really kind of off the back of the napkin here, is just creating an environment where people feel safe being themselves. And when we talk about psychological safety in spaces, whether it be work or, wherever you happen to be, it's being able to authentically be you without being nervous or afraid that you will not be accepted for who you are. And so when we talk about that, if you think about it from a corporate perspective, I mean, honestly, not many people can say that they truly feel that way in certain corporate spaces because there's just such a hierarchy. There's such a high level of pressure and a high stakes space in some of those roles. And so it's harder to feel safe. And when you do have that psychological safety, by the way, the research shows that you do a better job at your job. You have the ability to really bring up and help to improve the space because you feel comfortable actually giving feedback in real time. And people just get way more out of you. So when you're talking about athletics, I'm saying that, and what I was helping these folks in the department to understand is that if you want to get the most out of these student athletes here, they need to be able to be authentically who they are in this space. And that's essentially what psychological safety is.
That's wonderful. Yes. And I learned about it in my corporate experience. So for those who don't know me or have missed the first few shows, I worked at ExxonMobil for 25 years. The company was very focused on a lot of things around inclusion, simply because in corporations that size over the years, that was where the opportunity was, right? Corporations did not grow up necessarily with that kind of focus. And I was very proud to work for that organization because they were so intentional about trying to evolve and to adapt and accommodate those kinds of things. It's very difficult to do because these cultures are very strong in these larger organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe just the last point of establishing you as an expert before we get into the topic is you worked here at the university in a very important role and supporting kind of equity and inclusion in the athletic department.
Yes, I was the Executive Associate Athletic Director for Strategic Initiatives in Nebraska Athletics. And really in my role there, I helped with not only the strategic planning of the department, but I also helped with making sure that the environment within the athletic department was inclusive and included everyone's thoughts and opinions. And people felt the opportunity to learn more about themselves and also better understand different people's cultures from that perspective. And so I was hired back in 2021. And, just over the years that I was there, I truly enjoyed that role because I had the opportunity to really not only create a better environment culturally within the department, but also to open up the athletic department to people outside of the department that didn't get the chance to have access to it. So if you think about it, for the most part, in order to interact with our athletic department here, there's certain events that you go to, whether it be a ticketed event or something like that. But for the most part, you have to have some money in a way to interact with the department. And so I was helping to create some barrier removing opportunities for people to be able to go to games without having to pay a fee, right?
Yeah.
So they could participate essentially in the sea of red without having to pay. And
Right.
so different things like that, inviting in people from different groups, whether it be Special Olympics Nebraska, other organizations, that giving them access to athletics without having to pay, right?
Yes.
And so removing those barriers, that was really the joy of my time within the athletic department.
That's fantastic. And last week, Nico and I were talking about spenders and savers.
Yes.
And, depending on where you are in your life journey, sometimes you are a spender or a saver, but then there's also the way people get joy out of life. There's how people want to help. There's all kinds of things going on in someone's worldview about being a spender or a saver. But one of the things that it highlighted was why people might be in the situation they're in of one or the other,
Yes.
and what they do with that. And I think being able to go to the games, you don't realize that everybody can't go to the game, right?
That's right.
We know that nobody can go to a volleyball game because it's very hard to get a ticket.
That's right.
But thankfully, football with almost 100,000. What do we have? 90,000 seats in there. Yes, you can fit a lot more.
There's some opportunities there.
There are some opportunities. So that's great. Well, hopefully those kind of few things on your resume. You do a lot. You're involved in a lot more things we won't talk about, but it hopefully gives the audience a sense of why we're so lucky to have you tonight just talking about this topic. So you and I met up in a different location, and I started to talk to you about this show and asked you what was important to you. And I know lots of topics are important to you, but in the context of this show, you had mentioned that you would be interested in talking about men being allies. I'm abbreviating it because there's a lot more to it than that.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate you coming on to do that. We've had one male guest before talk about come on and share perspectives. And, this is only the beginning of this show. So with that in mind, I wanted to just kind of kick this off. And I don't know if we've got a Nico rolled in now yet. Jake, is she live and able to talk to us?
Can you hear me now?
Okay. Nico, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there we are. Awesome.
There we go. I've been listening with my public health ear, so we're all good.
Well, I might start with one question, and then if you wanna jump in here as you always do. I just want to make sure we could hear you, so we're aware. All right. So I guess the first thing for me is what kind of inspired you to be an advocate? You describe yourself as an advocate. You're a girl dad, and I know that.
Yes.
But in addition to being a girl dad, you have all these credentials that we've just gone through. So what about this topic inspires you and excites you?
So, what really inspired me is growing up with a very strong mother. My mom is from Trinidad, and growing up with her and watching her as a son and just seeing how powerful she was in spaces and how she encouraged all of her children to be strong, and just watching her have to navigate some of the challenges that she had to navigate as a woman growing up. And then also all of the confidence she instilled in me and how much she pushed me and all of my siblings. Honestly, it started there. And then also having an extremely strong grandmother who brought the family from Trinidad to the United States and really established that foundation for my mom's family here. I have really broad shoulders to stand on as far as the women in my life. And, my mom just being such a strong woman and just seeing her just accomplish so many amazing things over the course of her life with very little education, but a lot of grit. And seeing how she had to navigate all these things, it just inspired me to honestly be an advocate for women, because I saw, again, some of the challenges that she was dealing with. I knew how capable and amazing women can be when they have opportunity and when they have the chance to truly shine. I just, honestly, I was first of all hoping for that for, my daughters, right? And so, but anything that I hope for my daughters, I hope that I can also help to advocate for anyone else's daughters, because I hope that someone else would also advocate for mine, So It's kind of like this reciprocal thing. I try to put out into the world what I would hope to get. And to get support for my daughters, I try to support women in the community wherever I can and advocate for them and provide support as much as possible, allyship, just honestly like a support and somebody who's going to be right there to fight for them, support them, be next to them, however I can. That's what I learned growing up. I saw it, and then I got the chance to, continue learning more as I watched my older sister, who I truly look up to, navigate some of the challenges she navigated as well. So there's just been all these strong women around me. And, my wife falls in that category as well. I saw her overcome significant challenges and on all the things that she's had to deal with as well. So it's just from being around a lot of strong women that I, have this sense of I want to make sure, however I can, facilitate any opportunities for women as possible. I want to be there for that.
That's great. And I appreciate you sharing that. And one of the things I do on this show is to dive in, because people listening don't necessarily know what you're talking about. So if you can explain, what did you witness that your mother had to overcome, or your grandmother or your sister? What was it you were witnessing that was so challenging that they had to
That's
deal
a great
with?
question, because that's where the rubber hits the road. I
Yes, it
appreciate that
is.
question. So for my mom worked for a company called RCA, and she basically worked in a space that was all male, and she would work on the range. So when they would launch satellites and space shuttles and things like that, she'd have to go up in the mountains in New Mexico, and she'd be up there with all men. And she dealt with a lot of issues being in a space of all men. And she would come home and she'd talk about those things, even when we were young, and how she had to, really advocate for herself in those spaces and say, I can do the things that you all can do, and I can even do them better. And she was the only woman in that space. And my dad didn't necessarily know exactly what to do. He knew that he needed to support her, but my mom had to deal with a lot of those challenges being the only woman in a space like that. And I always saw her go back with a strength and a resolve that she's going to solve the problem on her own, and that she's going to fight back against these men who would say, negative things to her in the space, and, make comments about, her being pregnant when she was pregnant there and everything else. I mean, this is the early 80s, and she was dealing with these issues, of course. And so just to hear her deal with some of those issues with my grandmother, it was the same thing. Being a single mom of 7 children and having to fight for her family and get government assistance and things like that. She dealt with a lot of issues with men in those spaces. My mom would talk about those things. For my sister, unfortunately, she experienced some really negative things in college around assault. And I was right there with her when some of those things happened and had to provide support for her. So very candidly and unfortunately, seeing some of these really negative things that happen to these women in my life that I truly love, and knowing that as a man, I can speak up and I can actually, try as much as possible to advocate and recognize that, when people would ignore that those things are still happening to this day, right? That's a problem, because they are. Right. There's still, certain things, certain behaviors that are happening in spaces that are impacting women. There's still things that are happening where women aren't getting opportunities and everything else. The equity is not there.
And I think you've brought up things that are very near and dear to my heart, because I worked at ExxonMobil, also a very male-dominated company, industry, engineers. And in the types of engineers working at ExxonMobil, it tended to be the male disciplines, not for any other reason than systemic historical things. Mm-hmm. But what I think people forget is, the culture that's built when there's sameness.
Yes.
Okay. So if it's all men, you said she's in the hills of New Mexico or Mexico, and doing something technical, and I'm thinking, okay, there's probably no restrooms.
That's exactly right. Yes,
okay,
yes.
That's the first thing that comes
exactly
to mind.
Right.
And if you're the only woman in it's a lot easier for guys to handle their business outside than it is for women.
Yeah.
And you stand out, you feel awkward, you don't want to call attention to yourself when you've got to deal with something as basic as that.
Yes.
And then they don't want to, you're worried they don't want to deal with you because it's not as easy for you, right? I mean, we're getting very specific here, but it's because the sameness
that's right
drives a lack of understanding. Not intentional, right?
That's right.
Many times you don't realize that stuff is very comfortable for all the people that are the same.
Right.
Vice versa, if you had a room full of women.
Yes.
And I used to love to do this at work. We'd be in there, room full of women talking about getting pedicures or whatever. There might be one guy in the meeting, and I would say to him, "How does it feel?" We're all sitting here talking about pedicures, and 10% of the time the guy'd be like, "I got one this weekend,"
right?
And then we'd all laugh and we'd go on. But the other 90% of the time it was like, "Oh my gosh," right? So that sameness drives a culture that if you're not aware of it, which is where allyship to me, really can come in, is to help someone feel more accepted, less awkward, not like they're unusual or abnormal.
Absolutely, and I think that. Over the years, what I recognize is that there were men in those spaces to help, like specifically my mom, and then also my sister, as she's gone through her journey professionally and everything else. There's been allies, and those people have been really important. And I think to see how important those people are, and then also as my daughters have started their journeys through the space, recognizing, that when there are allies that step up and support them and how amazing that is for them. I think that's why, I like to be in that space as well, because I want to be someone who helps someone in that regard.
Right. And when we talk later in the show, we'll give some very specific examples of how you can do that, because I think that's really important. Aniko, if you're there, I think you had a question for Lawrence that might be interesting at this point. Do you want to pose that?
Yes. I was just wondering what your stance is on men getting involved early on in positions such as education, government, medical, to kind of be those allies from an early start and influence children before society kind of gets a hold of them, what the importance of that may be.
That's a really important question, because I think that, the way that we end up in these spaces where sameness and there's problems in that sameness and everything else, it really starts from a young age. I think it starts from when, boys and girls, if you watch things from a development perspective, early on, elementary school, you start to kind of go through, you see there's this major change that starts to happen within middle school. So 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, this is where you start to see the separation of genders from that perspective. And there's not as much interplay. There's not as much connection across social groups and different things like that. So I do think that, first and foremost, the thing you have to understand to be an ally is you need to understand development. You need to understand what development looks like for young people, and you need to understand when some of those things start to happen. Because I think where you could really make an impact is if you think about middle school teachers, and I know they already have a ton to do, and I don't want to put anything else on their plate, but if you start to think about where some of these significant separations are happening from a gender perspective, and where people start going in their own respective direction and they don't interact as much, that's where some of that significant impact can be made. And, I used to always think about it this way, if you happen to be a person who doesn't necessarily have a sibling of, a different gender, then you may not truly understand certain aspects of growing up with people in that space. And so for me, I had 2 sisters and a brother, right? And two brothers. We adopted a brother when we moved to Nebraska, but I got to see my sisters up close and personal, right? And that was quite an education for me. In so many different ways, because you just learn more about that. And again, having a very strong mother as well, who was very open and willing to talk about the things that were going on in her life as well, I got that education from home. And so, but if you don't grow up with siblings that are different genders than you, then you don't necessarily see that. And, if we think about all of the things that happen from a socialization perspective with young people as they grow up, and they are seeing these different roles that they should play in spaces. They're also being indoctrinated by media, different things like that. All these things that are happening, they have different views of what they believe those things are. And so I think, honestly, this is where, when we talk about gender roles, we talk about some of these things in the school system. This is why it was so problematic that some of those things were getting pulled out of the school system, right?
Right.
Because if you don't truly understand those things, and you don't have anyone to really teach you those things, you could grow up with a very skewed view of what the world is like for someone who's different from you in so many different, categories. So to answer your question, I would just say that continuing to watch out and see opportunities for young people, regardless of their gender, to keep working together all throughout their educational career, championing those opportunities and trying to make sure that we are able to bridge those gaps between the genders of people throughout the process, I think is incredibly important. So this is where understanding development, understanding socialization of young people, all those things are important for people who are in the education space. Most people who are going into education, they have a foundation in that developmental understanding. And so, but I think continuing to offer those opportunities to bridge those gaps and work across the lines, essentially, if you want to look at it that way, creating more co-ed opportunities for people to accomplish things together, right? Across gender, all of those things. I mean, you see where those separations start to happen, whether it be in sport and different things like that. It's just like all of a sudden we go in our own separate directions, and then we rejoin when we're kind of on the other side of things, and it shouldn't be that way. Right. So I think understanding that from a developmental perspective, creating additional opportunities for young people to work together, challenging some of those social norms, and recognizing that, everyone's capable of doing whatever they want to do, right? I mean, clearly there's some limitations and different things like that for some folks to get into certain industries, and there's less people in certain industries, but continuing to offer students that ability to dream about what they want to accomplish without applying some of the arbitrary limitations that society can apply.
Right. And
Definitely.
Nico, maybe right before we got a minute, maybe we'd take a break. What have you seen, if anything, in watching Nate go to school where gender bias is built into how the school systems handle development?
Yes, I was thinking that at the end of his response, I have a sixth grader and I'm seeing the separation begin of, before I probably would have chalked it up to girls mature faster, but now I'm being offered the perspective that it is perspective. So, that definitely is something, sex education is a hot topic somehow now again.
Wow.
So, having the kids separated versus non for that education, learning about others' bodies. My son was the one to speak up and say, well, if you plan on having a wife, don't you need to know what she's going through? So, if you don't have that perspective and it's not openly talked about, because we're not shy in our house, but it could be tricky. So it's just even more of a reason to have said allies in positions as such.
Absolutely.
Well, let's take a break and come back and talk about that, because I think these specific examples is where I like to leave this show, so it's very tangible what we're talking about, so people don't wonder what are we talking about. So let's take a break. This is Walk the Herd, 93.7 The Ticket. We'll be right back.
Nebraska farmers, harvest is here and every gallon counts. That's why Sapp Brothers Petroleum launched the Go Big Red Fuel Giveaway. When you contract your fuel with Sapp Brothers, enter to win $1,000 in fuel credits. As Husker Country knows, the only thing stronger than the roar at Memorial Stadium is the drive of a farmer putting food on the table. Fuel your farm with Sapp Brothers Petroleum and enter to win $1,000 in fuel credits. Visit sapbros.net today. Sapp Brothers Petroleum, fueling the heartland. Go Big Red.
If the power is out, traffic lights might be too. If you come across a dark intersection, treat it like a four-way stop. See more tips at les.com/safety.
This is former Husker and NFL linebacker Jay Foreman. For years, I've suffered from degenerative problems in both of my ankles, but thanks to a thorough and thought-out plan provided by Advanced Medical Imaging, I was able to get my life back with the least amount of pain as possible. While working through multiple options, the team of physicians at Advanced Medical Imaging were there to answer any questions I had. If you're experiencing any pain at all and want to get your life back, go to amimaging.com or give them a call at 402-484-6677. Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard.
This is Bill Mitchner, Executive Director of Lincoln Lighthouse. Did you know Lighthouse provides multiple programs for students such as one-on-one tutoring and mentoring, as well as pro-social skill exercises, while providing them a nourishing meal and a safe space during all months of the year, even during school breaks. Learn more or contribute to Lighthouse at lincolnlighthouse.org today.
This fall, Baumgars has everything you need to get your farm ready for the season. Stock up on livestock feed, deer corn, and pine shavings to keep your animals fed and your farm running smoothly. Need tools for your fall projects? Grab DeWalt power tools and grass seed to keep your fields in top shape before winter. From your barn to your backyard, Baumgars has you covered. Get ready for the season with everything you need to finish those fall fix-ups. Baumgars, field, farm, and fall fix-ups.
Are you looking to upgrade your equipment and keep cash in your pocket? Through October at Landmark Implement, get up to a 24-month waiver on select John Deere tractors and combines, or lock in a 2.9% fixed rate for 36 months, followed by a qualified standard rate for another 36 months. Whether you're thinking of this year's harvest or planning ahead, we've got a solution that works for your bottom line. Visit your local Landmark Implement for more details, or check us out at landmarkimp.com and experience the Landmark difference.
Schaefer's is celebrating its 79th anniversary with special rebates, financing, savings, and free delivery store-wide.
Update your home with innovative Samsung appliances and save up to an additional $900 with rebates. Samsung Innovation saves you energy and time with easy-to-connect appliance technology. Plus, during Schaefer's anniversary, get free delivery on your appliance purchase.
So hurry in during Schaefer's 79th anniversary event, going on now.
This is your year, where your team takes it all the way. Win way more than bragging rights at Warhorse Casino, where your love of the game could put $1 million in your pocket. The Pro Football Frenzy is free to play with prizes all season long. Weekly cash prizes up to $1,000 cash, season-long leaderboards, and a chance to win $1 million. Only at Warhorse Casino. Wagers may only be placed on Nebraska-based teams when played outside the state of Nebraska. Must be 21 or older to gamble. Gambling problem? Call 1-833-BET-OVER.
Fall is here, and so are cooler temps, darker evenings, and slick roads. Is your vehicle ready for the change in seasons? At A1 Automotive, we've got you covered. From tire checks, brake inspections, batteries, and heater systems, we make sure your car is road ready for the Nebraska winters ahead. Don't wait until the first frost. Schedule your fall car care checkup today and drive with confidence all season long. A1 Automotive, always honest answers.
You're listening to Walk the Herd on 93.7 The Ticket. Here is your host, Rebecca Pearson.
All right, we're back. Walk the Herd. It's Nico, Rebecca, and Dr. Lawrence Chatters in the studio with us. We're having a great conversation. Never enough time. But I wanted to come back to, we were talking about right before the break, just being allies and differences and genders and what's happening in the school system, which just kind of leads me to continue to talk about cultures and sameness. Okay. Yes. And if I'm going to sound like a broken record tonight, it's because I am a broken record on this topic of the sameness. We do this show because people are different. And if you're not different, if you're part of the norm, it could be the norm in this studio, it could be the norm on O Street, it could be the norm in the world, whatever. If you're part of the norm, unless you're tuned into these issues, you don't recognize other people and how they feel when they're not part of the norm. Yes. And we continue to want to open our minds to differences because there's a need to feel accepted. There's a need to feel a part of something as humans. There's a few people that are the outliers, but generally humans want to feel connected and they want to be accepted. So if you're the different one in the room, right, it's uncomfortable. Yes. And the point of having allies, which is our topic for today, really is to help make that more comfortable or to bring that to light so you're not hanging yourself out to dry as the different one. Yes. Right? Yes. You've experienced more of that than me. Growing up here in Nebraska, coming in from Trinidad, right? Yes. You don't look like most of these Nebraskans. Right. 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 And you've been very prominent in speaking out. So I kind of like to get a sense from you. What do you feel are some of the things that an ally can do to help in the gender space or anything else, right? Because there's a lot of commonality in being an ally.
Yeah. And, here's the deal. So there's allies that are at different spaces along the spectrum, if you will. So there's very simple things you can do, and there's really complicated things that you can do. So to me, first and foremost, to be an ally, you have to recognize that there is a certain amount of sameness in a space, and you have to recognize that sameness could provide some discomfort for somebody who's not the same. And I'll just give you an example. And this is going to be somewhat of an example that will align with our topic of gender, but it's going to be a little different and a little unique. So when I'm in a space with, because I work with an organization that supports HBCUs, and so I'm often in spaces where there's a lot of African Americans, right? Now, within those spaces of African Americans, I am different because I have albinism. So I might be in a space of all people with dark complected skin, but I look different and I stick out, right? What would be an ally in that space essentially would, and this happened to me. I went to a conference for the Congressional Black Caucus a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking. You on the plane, yeah, that's right. That's right. You were there. So, So I was at that conference and I was speaking to one of the vendors, and she said, I just wanted to let you know, and this was kind of her stepping out and kind of seeing me being different in that space. She's like, I have a cousin who also has albinism, and in that family, they actually have two kids that have albinism. And I said, really? I said, I have two kids in my family that have albinism, me and my older sister. And it just instantly made me feel seen in that space because, again, in a space of African Americans, I stick out because of my skin color and everything else. And so it was just kind of this very subtle unique way of her mentioning something that she knew would put me at ease a bit, because I do feel self-conscious in those spaces, right?
Sure.
There's a lot of colorism in certain communities.
Sure.
And so in those spaces, I feel, a little different. And so that's just an example. Now, if we were to take that and kind of, really assign some concept toward gender here, it would just be recognizing in a space just similar to like, and I'll just use my mother's example, where she was working on the range and in a space that was mostly men, and just recognizing as there is a certain culture and certain things that are said in those spaces that, this is just what that culture is. But then being able to step to that person and say, what is it like for you to experience this space with all of these people here?
Right.
And is there anything I can do to help, provide you with support in this time frame or this moment that, you're experiencing this, right? And that's one step on the spectrum. Now, if you have a deeper understanding of some other things that are happening, and you have a deeper understanding of the space in general, you might be able to make a more advanced statement similar to the one that the lady made to me in that space, right?
Right.
But otherwise, you can just kind of point out that, hey, this is a space where there is a lot of homogeneity. There's a lot of people that are the same here. And I recognize that, you might be experiencing some different things because you're different. Maybe not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Don't make any assumptions. But there's different ways you can support along the spectrum. So I would encourage people to potentially step in where you feel comfortable. Okay.
Right.
Guess what? Sometimes people are going to be in certain situations. You might try, or you might attempt to, be an ally in that space, and they may not need it. We also have to recognize that, right? Like, we can't allow our egos to be so big to always think that, again, it's kind of not that savior complex, right? I'm not the man coming over to save you because you're in this space. It's, this is just kind of how I see things. And, I'm here to support you if you need it.
Sure. Well, and if you are the odd man out or the odd woman out for whatever reason,
Yes.
right? It could be skin color, it could be height, it could be a disability, it could be younger, older, right? There's a million things that could be going on.
Right.
It generally, I think it feels good to have someone talk to you.
Absolutely.
Okay, because someone has noticed you're the odd man or woman out.
Yes.
And it's funny. And Aniko, I want to ask you here. So Aniko's biracial, right? She's light skinned. She could certainly relate to just looking different in a room full of African Americans. Aniko, you want to give your example? I've got one I want to share with that's very recent. But do you have how do you look at this, and how would you want to be treated if you were the odd woman out somewhere?
I will leave you for the example, but I want to say that Dr. Chatters brings out such a good point, because I think a lot of times we're taught to kind of not speak on something or quickly turn away, whether it's gender, appearance, ability. It's kind of, some people are in fact taught, like, you don't talk about it, you don't bring it up. So to bring it to the forefront that this is a comforting thing is such an important point to make. As a biracial light-skinned person, it's very interesting to not find common ground more often than not, but then also being a chameleon in some aspects. So I will make sure to practice myself even more so in saying versus trying to belong, which can be an easy habit to fall into.
Absolutely. And I think, do you agree that there's as humans, we like to have a sense of belonging, whatever that means to us?
I do. I think, kind of after the iPhone came out, we kind of lost a little bit of community. People were much more inept to be together, to reach out, to go outside and play even. So I think we're all still looking for that sense of belonging, and that kind of shows itself now as we all belong to this group on Facebook, that we all have this shared interest, or we have this club or sports group that we're all trying to. It's a lot harder to make friends and have said community, but overall belonging, I think, brings security and peace. And who doesn't want security and peace,
That's
right. And there's just the feeling of being left out, just like being left out of a joke. Let's just say somebody cracks a joke and you don't get it.
Yeah.
It's just a weird feeling, right? You don't have to be different in any way.
That's right.
To just not get the joke.
Right.
And yet I think most people can relate to it. You just feel kind of odd. Like, why didn't I get the joke? Is it not relevant? Am I not smart enough? Like, what's going on there? And I used to have examples all the time, being the only woman in an executive room of men at ExxonMobil. And usually I was left out of the conversation because it was about golf, which I do not play. And, no one would notice that they're all chatting and yucking it up and they're having a great time. And, nothing wrong with that necessarily. Right. But in the room, I was not included. And therefore, people weren't getting to know me. Mm-hmm. This is a huge thing. And then the joke inside the corporate world like that is, there's a lot of conversation that happens in the bathroom. Mm-hmm. It just does. Mm-hmm. Or on the way to the bathroom. And if it's all men, they're all going to the bathroom and they're, everybody's chatting. There's a lot happening outside of a meeting. And if you are, striving to have an impact in your position, those things matter. And if they're building relationships on the golf course, those things matter. Okay, I could learn golf. Totally my choice. Didn't want to do it. So I had to find other ways to appeal. So that's one example of just, a gender difference, very real to me, and felt awkward lots of times.
Yes.
And then sometimes later, as we were starting to train people how to speak and talk up to mention things like that, I'd be like, okay, enough golf talk, guys. I'm not included. But I'm that person and I can do that. But it felt better when we were training people to do this because it was accepted for me to do something like that. And then recently I found myself at a party with all Black people. And I haven't been the only white person in a room in a long time, but I grew up going to nightclubs and things where I would be the only white person, and very different environment of being in a club, dancing or whatever, and then being at a party. And it was noticeable to me, but these were fabulous people and I didn't feel anything. It was on my mind,
yes.
Because I stood out, but I didn't feel awkward or weird, right? Because they were amazing humans, Yeah. So it's sometimes just the culture that you're in where you don't have to feel different.
Yeah.
But sometimes you do.
Yeah.
You could even say, and I relate to having a lot of grit, but not a lot of formal education. And there are those kind of groups in professionalism. When you don't have a degree, you're almost trying to always prove why you belong to be in said room, besides the fact that your qualifications, personality, experience have gotten you there. It's almost this added element of, but I should be here,
Right.
Right. Well, and in that context, Nico, if someone was going to be your ally, what would you want? Very good example. What would you want?
I would want equal pay. I would want equal, opportunities for time off and the same rules applying to everyone. Just equity. Mm-hmm. Very cut and dry. I just would want equity. And I don't want it to have to be something that I have to present and be worried about there being retaliation or resentment. I just want the culture to be. Now that's a magic, beautiful thing to want, but on a simple level, just equity.
Yeah. And I think you have to be super sensitized. This is why I like the show that we do here, is because we're giving very specific examples, because awareness is a lot of it.
Yes.
When you are just recognizing that someone might be different from you and therefore might feel different, act different, have different reasons for doing what they're doing. Like, again, lots of things that could be going on. The more aware you are, the more you can just try to reach out or acknowledge or include someone. You don't have to call them out and say, hey, you're biracial and you must feel weird.
Exactly.
It's not that.
Right.
It's just a recognition that someone in the room is different and making sure that they feel included in a conversation.
Yeah.
If they don't have an education for some reason and you're talking about something that somebody might not understand because they don't have the same education. I mean, you've got your PhD. Mm-hmm. You're going to tap me out. I'm sure at some level I'll be like, okay, what are you talking about? Right. Where you're explaining that, but just recognizing that somebody might not have that background and taking the time to explain.
Right.
There's a lot of things that you can do.
Yeah. And it does take, to me, and this is where I think people are really nowadays trying to take the very easy way and simple way out. It does take a certain level of cognitive complexity to think about who you're forgetting and think about what you're forgetting about people who might be different from you. It does take the ability. It is a privilege to be able to think more from that perspective, how can I do a better job of being able to reach everyone in this space who might have a different perspective? That's really doing something different. And so I understand, you see a lot of pushback against those things nowadays. It's like, oh, well, let's just, who cares? If people are different from you, let's just take one way fits all, right?
Yeah.
And so I think this is calling people to be better, This is calling people to think more and think more deeply about how they can support each other. And again, there's a complexity to it sometimes that some people want to avoid because they find it to be challenging. That I'd have to look at somebody who I can make some assumptions about and try to think, well, maybe those assumptions don't apply to them, right?
Right.
However, I think we are called to do that, and we would expect the same of other people because we don't all fit into this very neat box either, right?
No.
And you know how terrible it feels when someone just makes an assumption about you.
Mhm.
I think everybody's had that experience before. Oh, you're from Nebraska, this, that, or the other, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think we are called to have that complexity and at least try to lean into this idea of learning more that each human being is a unique person, and it's not one size fits all.
Right. And I love that you pointed that out because I wanted to make sure that we did, that it's hard to address it and be aware of it because it's so much easier to be a part of the norm and to go with the norm because it's what you do naturally.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It is very hard. We appreciate that it's very hard. So when someone even makes half an effort, you really do appreciate that. But we also know what it takes because we're practicing it, even though I'm sure none of us, the three of us, don't get it right every time, but we're practicing it. I know how I feel. And I'm going through this conscious thing in my head. It's like, oh my gosh, it's going to take me longer if I stop and talk to someone or whatever, right? The cognitive load, as you said, or the cognitive complexity is I have to stop and think about it.
Yes.
I don't just get to go with the flow. I might need to make an extra effort to someone to do something to make them feel included. And all of that is extra on top of whatever it was you were doing. And we understand that that can be a challenge, but that is what we're talking about. So we appreciate people that do that. When we come back from the break, I'm going to ask you to give some examples of maybe where you've been challenged or some good stories that you'd like to tell. So this is Walk the Herd, and Nico, Rebecca, and Lawrence will be right back after the break.
After a long, hot summer, are you ready for fall? What about your home? Is your heating system ready for cooler temperatures ahead? Call Bryant for your fall heating check. No matter what brand of equipment you own, Bryant's trained technicians will thoroughly clean and inspect your furnace or heat pump to make sure you stay warm, safe, and comfortable. Call today to schedule your home heating check. 467-1111. Bryant Air Conditioning, Heating, Electrical, and Plumbing. 467-1111. Bryant, whatever it takes.
Tired of asking what's for dinner? Nourished for Life has got you covered. At Nourished, they're a local meal prep company that delivers fresh, chef-crafted, healthy meals straight to your door. Made from wholesome ingredients and ready when you are. No shopping, no chopping. Just heat, eat, and enjoy every night of the week. Fuel your busy days with balanced meals that are designed to keep you satisfied and energized. Visit nourishedforlife.co to purchase meals and taste the convenience of home-cooked comfort without the hassle. It's game on at Elway Power Sports of Lincoln, Nebraska's premier power sports dealership. Get geared up for savings like you've never seen before during Elway Days. Their biggest sale of the year runs October 14th through the 18th when every red tagged machine is priced at invoice plus $300. That's it. No freight, no setup, no extra fees. Don't miss out on these epic savings. Elway Power Sports of Lincoln has you covered all under one roof with a large selection of side-by-sides, ATVs, motorcycles, and personal watercraft at the 27th and I-80 location.
Imagine hitting rewind on your life 10, even 20 years. With testosterone therapy from Limitless Male, you can turn back the aging clock and get your edge, energy, and confidence back. If you've lost your drive, sleep deprived, muscle loss, belly fat, irritable, you're not the guy you once were. Get your T levels checked at Limitless Male. More and more men are realizing hormone replacement can turn back the clock. Schedule your free consult at limitlessmale.com.
You're listening to Walk the Herd on 93.7 The Ticket. Here is your host, Rebecca Pearson.
Okay, welcome back. This is our final segment on Sunday night, Walk the Herd. It's Nico, Rebecca, and Dr. Lawrence Chatters with us. And right before the break, I gave Lawrence just a little bit of a heads up that I'd love to share some specific examples if he can come up with one. Particularly about a moment where you were challenged by a woman's perspective or leadership, and how did that help you better understand equity, or what was your takeaway from that? Can you think of something?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I hope
you
she
said
doesn't.
that too eagerly.
Yeah.
As if there's more than one.
Well, I'll just tell you. So, I worked with a great coach at Nebraska named Heather Brink, and she's our gymnastics coach. You've met
we
Heather
know
before.
Heather. Yes, we've had her on.
She is a tough, no nonsense woman,
Uh-huh.
and she just is so, she advocates for her student athletes so incredibly. And, honestly, when I first started being her sport administrator, she would really just come into the room and just like, she was so passionate about advocating for those student athletes that I almost felt like she was yelling at me. And so I kind of felt like, I had to really check myself for that because, she's just so passionate about what she cares about. And again, this is just getting into some of these gender roles and gender norms when it comes to men who speak passionately versus women who speak passionately, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So I had to really check myself on that and just be like, you know what? She's advocating for these young women on her team. She truly cares about this. She really wants to accomplish these goals. I need to listen to her as such. And so we had to come to some consensus that, first and foremost, because we'd battle in there, and it was kind of like, I felt myself getting a little more frustrated sometimes, but I had to back up and say, she really truly cares about this issue. And I need to recognize her passion as what it is, which is advocacy, right? And so, but honestly, what I would tell you is that, if I was dealing with a male in that same situation, I might have looked at it a little differently. I had to check my own viewpoint of what a powerful woman sounds like and how she advocates, right? And so
I love that.
That was truly me having to like step back and say, okay, why am I feeling this way? Like, why can't she come in this office and have a boisterous conversation with me because she truly cares about her student athletes versus, some other coach that's yelling at somebody else,
Right.
And so anyways, that's just an example. And her and I had a wonderful, wonderful professional relationship in that I recognized how passionate she was about supporting her student athletes. And I tried to do everything I could to support her in that and advocate for her. And but again, it was rocky at first because I was just like, whoa, like it just the power that she speaks with and just the way that she holds on to her beliefs is so strong. It's kind of, it can kind of rub you the wrong way sometimes.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up because, women in general in this country anyway, haven't had a lot of leadership positions. And so we're not used to seeing women speak strongly.
Yes.
Let's just say that.
Yeah.
And the fact that you were even thinking, well, if this was a man doing this, would I be doing it thinking differently? Like, why am I thinking about this person who's a woman speaking out when I may or may not have thought that same thing with a man?
That's right.
Right. And that's so, super, super awareness to even be doing that and then think, okay, I get what she's after. I'm not going to hold this against her. There's something else going on here. Right.
Yes,
So yeah, that's awesome. Now, do you have something where you're particularly proud of yourself? That's a great story. Do you have another example of where, you had to challenge yourself or do something you're particularly proud of?
Well, what I would say is that when I was a vice president for student affairs at Midland University, the president is a woman still, but different woman who I worked for. And she came from the corporate world. And so when she, at Midland, our executive staff was all women and there was me and one other man on the staff. And so, what I would just say is that I truly learned from her, President Jody Horner. I learned so much about leadership from her. And I watched her so closely and how she allowed everyone's voice in the space to be heard. And I saw that she, again, coming from the corporate world and what she had experienced, she had created an environment where everybody did feel like they were being heard. She created an environment where everybody felt like they belonged in that space, that they were valued. And I watched her so closely in doing that. And I tried to incorporate some of that skill set into my leadership. And so I learned so much from her. She's definitely one of my mentors. She's been one of my mentors. And I just enjoyed watching all the things that she learned from in the corporate space. And I could recognize that, she had felt certain ways at certain times. And so she made sure, hey, if you're not saying anything, I'm going to allow you space in this room to speak. And so it was just amazing. That's just another opportunity that, and I've learned from a lot of great women over the years as leaders. Jan Deeds from the Women's Center here at Nebraska. She's an amazing person who was really a great mentor of mine. Marquita Armstead, who used to work in the athletic department here, who was our senior women administrator. I learned a lot from her leadership. And I've just seen so many great women leaders. My sister, who's the interim vice provost at Penn State for educational equity, all these women who I've learned from. It's just been amazing. And I've incorporated that into my leadership style as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. We appreciate you being so aware and such a great ally. So thanks for sharing those.
Yeah.
Aniko, do you have any last thoughts you want to share as we go out?
I would like to ask, with things in our environment or even country, leaning towards more division and more separation instead of incorporation, and it's harder to do that from within an organization, what do you suggest we do from the outside?
Man, that's a great question. First and foremost, I just think that, honestly, I think expansively, I believe that people tend to be good. And so I do think that we have to continue to encourage those people around us to recognize that there are some shifts that are happening. It's not happening everywhere. Even though it feels that way, there's still a lot of men out there who can be reached because they have connections and they want to do better. And I think that's where I've always stepped into the space when I talk to men about how they can be better allies and supporters, is just recognizing that a lot of these men out there have exceptionally strong women in their lives too. And they recognize that they want the world to be better for everyone, especially those young women who they support. When I think about my daughters, I think about my partner, my wife, my mother, my sisters. I think about all these people who I want the world to be better for them. And I think we have to continue to call on men to be allies, because I do believe they want the world to be better for everyone. And even though it doesn't feel like that sometimes, and we have some people in very high profile roles who are kind of pushing against that, I still do tend to believe that most men do want to step up and be allies and support as much as they possibly can, because they have women in their lives that mean the world to them that they want to support.
That's a beautiful thing. I appreciate that.
And that's a great place to leave Walk the Herd tonight. Dr. Lawrence Chatters, grateful to have you this evening. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Nico, Rebecca, and Lawrence, we're out on Walk the Herd. We'll see you next week.